better. Yeah. So, meantime, by the time everyone comes, let's talk about today's topic. Today's topic is important cardiac parameters. What you'll be learning today is all those terminologies which are used, especially when the angiography is written, or when there is a discussion about any of the cardiac things. Right? So preload, afterload, what exactly is the meaning? This thing will be helpful not only in understanding the physiology, but it will be important when we'll be talking about pharmac, and at the same time when we'll be talking about the medicine. Right? So all the parameters whatsoever are needed, they will be clarified today. So there is lots to understand. Importance of it in exam. For any of the competitive exam, they can create questions from it. Right? So we'll see some of the questions also. That is, what type of questions can they really ask? Okay. So it's 5:30 and let's start. So here we are with important cardiac parameters.
Recording in progress.
So that's important cardiac parameters. Right? So here is we start with the cardiac parameters which are already known to you and which are quite easy to understand. Right? So first parameter coming up, these are the cardiac parameters. The first parameter, and that thing is nothing but cardiac output. Now we know that it is like self-explanatory, but when we have to really say define it, that thing is one, the stroke volume, that is with every beat how much blood is getting pumped out with every beat, multiplied by number of beats per minute, and that is nothing but heart rate. So whenever it is said that how is the cardiac output, that means we are talking about it in 1 minute, right? Because heart rate is measured in minute. Stroke volume is in one stroke how much blood is getting pushed out. So when we say cardiac output, it means we are dealing with a minute. Now in order to understand this, there is one use of it. This is the Fick principle. Last time we used this principle. Right? So when we say that what exactly is cardiac output, so we defined the cardiac output in slightly different way. It was like the rate of oxygen consumption. You remember it? We talked about the rate of oxygen consumption upon arteriovenous oxygen difference. We utilize this thing very effectively when we were talking about the exercise, right? So those who have missed it or also, so let's clarify it in much better way. I would modify this thing slightly. Right? So we are talking about Fick's principle. First, the diagrammatic representation. If we say this is the artery and these are the veins, true. Here are the muscles, right? Any of those muscles of the body, they utilize oxygen, so oxygen will be coming over here from the arterial side. From the venous side, right? From the venous side, it will push the carbon dioxide. But that doesn't mean that there is no oxygen onto the venous side. Possible. If the entire oxygen whatsoever is handled by arterioles, muscles, they use all the oxygen so that nothing is left out on the opposite side. Nothing is left out, right? On the opposite side. But no, it never happens. So that's why what we do is we measure that how much oxygen is over here. So this is the pressure at the arteriole region. How much is into the veins? So pressure of oxygen into the veins. So that will actually give us the arteriovenous oxygen difference. So this means we are talking about this, right? So this means with every time how much oxygen is used from the arteries and how much is not used. So that is what we'll see from the veins. And how many times it is, and cardiac output, right? Multiplied by, if I take it over there, arteriovenous oxygen difference. So that would be nothing but rate of oxygen consumption, right? So every time heart is throwing the blood in 1 minute, right? We are calculating in 1 minute. And in that minute, how much oxygen is utilized? That is the rate of oxygen consumption. So this is how we'll keep on manipulating this particular equation when we have to calculate several things. So over here, we talked about cardiac output. Now we'll talk about heart rate. Right? So this is one more parameter, that is the heart rate. Now in our body, heart rate is extremely sensitive because there are two types of systems, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Right? Sympathetic and parasympathetic. By default, our heart is not at all interested in beating at a very high pace. Our heart is very much interested that they keep the things cool, slow, right? And that's why this parasympathetic system is our default system. But whenever the person goes into stress, any type of stress, so then sympathetic would take over. So at that point, it will say, okay, yes, you increase the heart rate, you increase the breathing, and entire sympathetic system starts. But otherwise, as soon as the emergency is over, because this is for emergency only. But as soon as the emergency is over, it will go back to the parasympathetic system. Now, who is handling it? Well, there is a cranial nerve called vagus nerve. So this vagus means someone who is wandering, right? Who is moving from one place to another. Obviously, this particular vagus nerve, if you see its entire course, starts all the way from the head and it goes all the way up to the abdomen, pelvis, right? So that's why this is one of the very vital cranial nerve. Now, this particular vagus, right? This is parasympathetic. So it will keep things cool. What would happen when there is decrease in the vagal tone? So when the vagus decrease, vagal tone, right? That means vagus nerve is not stimulated. So that means there would be decrease in the parasympathetic system. When there is decrease in the parasympathetic system, so sympathetic will take over, right? So the SA node, its effect would come on the SA node. SA node will start firing more impulses, and that is the reason that there would be increased heart rate. Increased heart rate, which will be called as the tachycardia. Right? We'll be calling it as a tachycardia. There can be two types, physiological and pathological. Physiological, that means when you do exercise, that is physiological. It makes sense. Yes, more oxygen is needed, and that's why there is increase in the heart rate. But there can be even pathological things, right? When it should not increase and still it is increasing. So there can be several reasons. But in nutshell, we are right now talking about tachycardia, that is the heart rate, increased heart rate. What would really do when there is tachycardia? The important point is, it is the coronary perfusion. Whenever the word perfusion comes, perfusion means one simple thing. Oxygen is coming. How much oxygen is going to the tissues? Right? So we'll say oxygen to the tissues. Now, here, when we say coronary perfusion, that means we are dealing with the heart tissue. That means heart tissue means heart muscles. So how much oxygen are they actually taking? When we deal with coronary perfusion, for which chamber we are very much interested, obviously the left ventricle, correct? Left ventricle. We are very much interested in that. One reason that left ventricle is biggest, most powerful. As compared to other chambers, they are utilizing less oxygen. Left ventricle will be utilizing more oxygen, and at the same time, it is pushing the blood into the aorta, and from aorta, it is going to brain. That's more vital, more important. Right? It is sending the blood to rest of the body. So that's why this left ventricular perfusion, that would be playing a critical role. So when we say coronary perfusion, that means we are dealing with left ventricular perfusion, left ventricular myocardial perfusion. Stronger the muscle, stronger the contraction. And that poor coronary vessel is passing through these muscles. So when the left ventricle squeezes, there is no scope that any amount of blood will be able to remain into that. It will literally squeeze, so it will push the blood out. When the muscle is relaxing, at that point the blood flows. Right. So what I'm trying to tell is that left ventricular perfusion occurs only, in bold and capital, occurs only during diastole. That means when the heart is relaxed. Now, when the heart is failing, so it means what? It means it is not getting the oxygen. And whosoever is demanding more oxygen, so if we give less oxygen to it, that is more susceptible to ischemic changes. Ischemia means lack of blood, right? Myocardial infarction, right? That is when the tissues, they start dying. So over here, this occurs only during diastole, but because left ventricle perfusion is highest, that's why this is more susceptible to ischemia. So amongst all type of heart attacks, right, in all chambers, left ventricular myocardial infarction is the commonest because its need is more, right? Sorry. So here it is, once again, we write our formula, that is the cardiac output, which is equal to heart rate into stroke volume. This formula will keep on coming 100 times. So cardiac output is heart rate into stroke volume, right? Stroke volume, whenever heart contracts, how much blood is really pushed, right? So that is what is called as the stroke volume, right, per beat. So when there is tachycardia, right, we feel that when the heart is beating faster, so that means things are all good, right? Even not only that, even we are getting more blood, right? So tachycardia, let's see that. Tachycardia means increased heart rate, right? Now onwards we'll write it with abbreviated HR, right? So tachycardia means increased heart rate. Increased heart rate means what? Now previously the heart was beating like this, right? Now it is beating like this. When it is beating like this, that means systole and diastole has become faster, right? So systole, heart is contracted, right? So blood push, relaxing, contracted, relaxing. But this diastolic phase, right? Diastolic phase is shortened, right? Is shortened. This is the phase in which we were interested, right? Because when this diastolic phase is shortened, that means, can we write that there would be decreased left ventricular myocardial perfusion, right? At any point, if there is even slightest of doubt, right? But all the way, right? It is like building up a story. All the way till end, it will happen like this. One parameter after the second, depending on third, fourth, and till end, we'll understand all the concepts, right? So left ventricular myocardial perfusion, this will be decreased because less time has been spent in the diastolic phase. So when this thing happens, two more things can occur. Diastolic phase is shortened, so left myocardial perfusion, that is decreased, but there is one more thing. because you are giving less time, so can we say that there would be decreased diastolic filling, right? There is decreased diastolic filling time. So now you are giving less time to the heart to dilate so that it is filled. We are talking about with respect to our ventricle, right? So ventricle previously was arams, he was dilating, getting the full blood and then pumping. But now you're giving less time, right? What does this decrease LV? Decrease LV is left ventricle, no problem. And this is left ventricular, correct? Left ventricular myocardial perfusion. Perfusion means we saw that how much blood, how much oxygen it is consuming. So this means, right, it is getting, because in diastolic phase only coronary circulation was going. Now you are giving less time, so less blood is going. Less blood is going, that is one thing, first thing. And second thing, what is happening is that there is decreased filling time, correct? Decreased filling time. Left ventricle is shortening. Shortening means, left ventricle is shortening means, I didn't understand. Just elaborate what exactly you want to ask. Okay, so it happens like when the diastolic phase is shortened, because this is like a time. Diastolic phase means this is time, right? Things are like getting small amount of blood. Exactly, that's what we wrote over here. Very right. Diastolic filling time, because it is dilating. Before it fully dilates and gets the blood, again we are telling chal push. So thus you are giving less blood to the left ventricular myocardium. At the same time, less blood is getting filled into that chamber whose power was much more. But now, because it has to be done faster, so before it gets full, it is like bus. Right? The bus has got the capacity of 60 people. But in order that 60 people should sit, it has to wait for, let's say, example, right? 1 minute. But what if it in 40 seconds only say, chalo, chalo, bus up, right? So not 60 people would be able to enter into it. So, adhi khali bus jai. That is what happens, right? That is what happens. And if it is said that ye jab bus khadi rahegi, at that point the petrol would be filled into it, diesel would be filled into it. But previously it was taking 1 minute for the diesel to get filled. But now it is going in 40 seconds only, so full capacity of diesel will not be filled into that. This is what would really happen in case of left ventricle. So now adding one technical term. Decreased filling time, decreased ventricular myocardial perfusion. So in nutshell, what we are writing is that there is decreased left ventricular perfusion resulting into you are not giving blood to such a hard working person, you are not paying to such a hard working heart, right? So what would happen? This decreased left ventricular myocardial perfusion, right, will result into slowdown, right? There would be, but you are constantly stimulating. So what heart would say, theek hai, whatever the blood which is coming, keep pushing. So this means it will lead to decreased cardiac output. This is the point. Decreased cardiac output. I just, yeah. What else? In tachycardia, then it won't be pumping more blood, right? And why do you? Exactly. What your question is 100% right. That in tachycardia, it won't be pumping more blood, right? Very right. Because this is the thing. This is one of the killer question which is asked in your seminary, that in tachycardia, will there be increase in cardiac output, decrease in cardiac output? There is decrease in cardiac output, right? When the heart beats faster, the cardiac output decreases. Right? But that is the reason that in order to compensate, it has to really pump again and again and again. So thus it is utilizing more oxygen, right? We'll just see this thing. But this is clear that tachycardia, it leads to decreased cardiac output, right? Okay, let's go into slightly still more detail. When we talk about MR, maximum MHR, maximum heart rate, I'll write it for you, max heart rate, right? And last time we said that max heart rate is very easy to calculate. All you need to do is 220 minus the age, right? Minus the age in years, right? In years, and that's it. Right? This is a normal standard formula. Let's talk about stroke volume from various perspectives. Right? From various perspectives. So, in order to understand the stroke volume, first thing what we are writing is, now what we'll be discussing in next 5 minutes, usually maximum errors they occur in this. Right? Maximum errors. Till this point, everything was pretty straightforward. This is EDV. Right? EDV stands for end diastolic volume. Right? This is aka also known as, we'll also be telling it as preload. Right? Now, very simple. Here is a heart. Right? This is a heart. We are talking about one volume. Volume means we are talking about any of the chamber. We'll be talking about left ventricle, right? Because that's the biggest chamber. Diastolic volume and diastolic volume. So heart beats systole, diastole, systole, diastole. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That's how it goes. Right? So that's why we said that the systole is 1 unit and the diastole are 2 units of time. So that was the ratio, and that's how we used to calculate. Right? Okay, so over here, now we slow down the whole process. 1, systole, and now the diastole has started. Right? 2, 3, right? We are going in slow motion. Now the heart has been fully dilated and we are about to contract. Stop. We take a picture over here. And this is what? This is end diastolic volume. When the heart has fully dilated, the blood is filled. And how much blood is filled? When the diastole is complete and the heart is now about to contract, that is what is called as the end diastolic volume, and it is called as the preload. Right? It is called as the preload. Preload means that before the gun is fired, the bullets, they are loaded. Right? So this is a preload. That means this left ventricle is now loaded with blood, right, and is about to fire and into the aorta. So this volume is called as the EDV, end diastolic volume. Right? End diastolic volume. This is also called as the preload, with reference to left ventricle, right? So left ventricle will say, okay, how much load is on me before I fire? And it will say, okay, this much chamber is filled. Okay, taken, fire, blood is pushed into the aorta, right? So this is first. The second condition, the second value, this would be easy to understand. This is end systolic volume, ESV, right? That is the end systolic volume. Now this end systolic volume is directly proportional, or it is inversely proportional to the contractility. Now let's see what it is. First, end diastolic volume. Again, same chamber, right? Now that chamber has contracted. Systole is done, right? Systole is done. So now how much blood was pushed? One amount, but how much is left out? How much is left out? That is the end systolic volume. The blood which is still present into the left ventricle after the entire contraction has been completed. Now, can you say that it is inversely proportional to contractility? Because if the heart is pumping fast means, I'm sorry, not fast, powerfully, right? If the heart is pumping powerfully, then the entire blood will be squeezed out and it will be thrown into the aorta. But if the heart is pumping weak, right, it won't be able to push entire blood. So this is what is called as contractility. Contractility, right? Contractility means with what power the squeeze, with what power the left ventricle is squeezing the blood out of the heart. Correct? So that is what is called as the end systolic volume. Are these two concepts crisp clean? Because then we'll be adding the third concept, which is based on this. All good, right? There is no response, so I'm taking it for granted that everything is fine. So next is stroke volume. Stroke volume. Can I write? Yeah, okay. Yeah, clear. Good. So can we write stroke volume equal? Acha, tell me one thing. Forget about this. Which value is higher? EDV is bigger or ESV is bigger? Out of these two values, which value would be bigger? Which number will be larger? Okay. Ayush, when I'm asking question, now you are asking me the same thing. You should have, don't wait for others. I don't mind, I'll explain it, but it's okay. But don't wait for others. Okay, all those who have answered EDV, you are 100% right. It makes total sense, right? So, Ayush, see again. Amongst all the chambers, right? This is left atrium, this is left ventricle. Left atrium contracts. Left atrium contracts, the blood gushes into the left ventricle. But at that point, left ventricle should relax. When left ventricle relaxes, this is what is called as the diastole. Diastole means it is the filling phase, right? It is the filling phase. When the blood gets filled into that chamber, right? So that is what is called as the diastole. When heart contracts, when the left ventricle contracts, blood is pushed into the aorta, blood goes out. That is what is called as the systole. True? Correct? So diastole is like saving, systole is like spending. Correct? So my question was, which one would be bigger? When you have saved, at that point, wallet would be full, or when you have spent everything, the wallet would be full. And everyone very rightly said that when you are saving it, that is at the end of the diastole, when the heart is full, right? So obviously the volume would be higher. Systole, it has spent, it has already spent the blood, thrown the blood into the aorta. So this value would be smaller, right? So this value would be larger and this value would be smaller. Very right. Ayush, this thing is clear? Systole is emptying phase. That's right. Systole is emptying phase. That's right. Okay. So now we create a third parameter, which we have already talked about, but now it will make much more sense. The thing what is called as the stroke volume, right? Stroke volume. Stroke volume is what? Forget heart is systole, diastole, systole, diastole. This thing tells how much blood heart is pushing out of the ventricle. How much blood is getting pushed into the aorta. We are interested in that because that is the blood which will be circulating into the entire body. So whenever you'll be doing this Doppler, whenever you'll be doing this 2D echo, right, you'll find that it would be mentioned the stroke volume. If the stroke volume decreases, that's a trouble. That means heart is become weak, right? So stroke volume is what the bigger number was and diastolic volume minus and systolic volume. Done. This is the number. Now, if we visualize it, so then heart has enlarged, right? Heart has enlarged because blood has come. So in the diastolic phase. So at the end of diastolic phase, you have got this much blood. And then heart contracted, right? So that was end systolic. Whatever is left out, right? Whatever is left out, so that blood was not pushed. What was pushed? Which went outside. So here, this is like a left ventricle, right? At the end of the diastolic phase, this was filled. So this is the end diastolic phase, right? This much is filled, right? And then this much blood is left out after end. So this was our end diastolic volume, and heart squeezed. It was unable to throw the entire blood. Some blood was lying over there. So this was our end systolic volume, right? So let's say this was just the number, just for the example, right? This is like say 250. Left out is 50. So we can say 250 minus 50, that means 200 was pushed out. And this is what we'll call stroke volume. With every stroke, how much of the volume of the blood is getting pushed out. This varies with person to person, right? If someone is athlete, if someone is powerful, the his stroke volume would be bigger, it would be better, right? If someone's heart is weak, it would be different. We need a percentage, right? We need a percentage. So what we do is, we use again a simple mathematics. This is called as the ejection fraction. The most important parameter of the condition of the heart. So whenever we do that, the phone would come, so what's the ejection fraction? And if we say ejection fraction, it's just 15%. That means there is so much of damage to the myocardial muscle that it is unable to push the blood. So the amount of blood which is into the, by the end of when diastole, and almost the same amount of blood is lying at the end of systole. That means heart is which are pushing just like this. A small amount of blood is going, most of the blood is lying over there only. Correct? Right. So what ejection fraction is? We'll be writing, the abbreviation is simple, EF, no big rocket science, but it is what this ejection fraction is. Stroke volume upon end diastolic volume. Right. How smart? Very simple. End diastolic volume is what? End diastolic volume is the total amount of blood, out of which what is going out, that was the stroke volume, right? Stroke volume is how much blood was getting pushed. So thus that's a percentage, because this is the maximum 100%, right? More than EDV, more than end diastolic volume, the blood cannot be pushed out, right? It is impossible, right? Because whatever the blood which is present, only that much can be. And this is stroke volume, that how much is ejected, how much is thrown out, thrown in aorta. So if 100% blood is there, if 50% is thrown out, right? Say for example, again, taking an example of that's 250. Otherwise, values are different, but this is for the ease of calculation. 250 and 125 is getting pushed out. 125 is getting pushed out. Cancel. This is 1 upon 2, right? Take the percentage multiplied by 100, so that means it is 50%. So this means this particular case, ejection fraction is 50%. For proper functioning of the heart, it has to be more than 50%. More than 50%. This thing is very important. Because you must have seen sometimes people say that बहुत खुशी या बहुत गम, and then they say they are having chest pain. Or when someone starts running, especially you see it in marathon, that it happens that when there is inclination, right, in many of the roads, right, there is inclination. Say for example, the race which is occurring just after about 10 days, there are 6 bridges, right? And then there are 2 complete loops. So this is bridge 1, bridge 2, bridge 3, bridge 4, bridge 5, bridge 6. The race starts from here. You go all the way up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Take a U-turn, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Race doesn't end over here. It will end for those who are on half marathon. For full marathon, go on the other side of the road. And once again, the same process. It goes, you reach up to the airport, and then from there, again, the reverse process. So it means 24 times you have to, and this is the end, 24 times you have to go up on the bridge and then you have to go down. Right? This makes entire race very tough. That's happening. Because when you start going up, the cardiac output will rise. It has to rise because there is increased oxygen demand. Right? Increased oxygen demand. And when you are going downhill we feel that yes, it is very easy. But downhill is when you have to balance. You have to actually stop yourself, otherwise you will tumble. So that will put tremendous load on your hamstrings and the calf muscles because you are balancing. So you are just pushing your body and then you are running. Right? So both the things, they become very strenuous. So that is the reason that when they say what is the elevation, right? So this is what it's called as elevation. During every elevation, remember to listen to your heart. So whenever in future, whenever you take part in marathon, always see the course. Why they say on the one day back, you should really go on to this race. So that elevation will give you the hint that how steep it is. Right? So for example, in Mumbai, that Padder Road, that is killer. Every year it happens, like someone gets, if not heart attack, but they definitely get angina pain. And that means ambulances, you'll find that they are constantly running. On the beginning of the Padder Road, there are 6 ambulances always present. Right? So during that run, so they keep on going. And on top side also, there are 2 ambulances. So they keep it. And yes, they are busy. So that is why I'm telling that this ejection fraction is a very vital component. Whenever you do exercise, right, this would be your focus. And there are specific exercises by which you can improve your ejection fraction. Now you are medical. You'll find that yes, it is very easy. Because if you want to increase your ejection fraction, what you will do? You would try to increase the stroke volume. If you have to increase the stroke volume, what you have to do? You have to either increase this value or decrease this value. Right? That means what? That is by the end of the diastolic phase, heart should be wonderfully loaded. And at the end of the systolic volume, heart should be as much as empty. True? So then automatically your stroke volume will increase. So now we'll see that how can you affect, because what was EDV and ESV? EDV and ESV, they were nothing but EDV and diastolic volume. That was called as the preload. So can we change this preload? Yes, you can. Right? Now we'll see that. So this is the story till this point of time. Right? Any doubt, any question? Right? Just let me know. So now because now we are going for the stroke volume variables. All these concepts, right? They are one after them, that they are connected one after the another. If you read Guyton, you'll find that in what we are discussing today is spread across about 40-45 pages, right? So within say 1 hour, it is equivalent to that you have read those 45 pages. But once this part is clear, you revise it every few days. Revise it, explain to others, and get this concept cemented into your brain. You'll find that not only the cardiology, but even the respiratory system, right? That would be very easy. You'll be able to understand it very fast, right? And especially when we'll be discussing the pathology. So now comes stroke volume variables. stroke volume variables. We want to change this stroke volume. Right? We want to change this stroke volume. So how to do that? So first, let's start with preload. Preload is what? Preload was end diastolic volume. End diastolic volume. So this preload, no big rocket science. Here is right atrium, left atrium, right? The right ventricle, left ventricle. Who will be pushing the blood into the left ventricle? Left atrium. So left atrium should get the blood. Left atrium will get the blood from where? Will be getting from the lungs, correct? Pulmonary veins, yeah, right? Pulmonary veins. So basically lungs. Lungs, they don't make blood. Who will be sending that blood? Well, that blood will be coming from the body, right? Basically, it will be from the body. Yes, that's right. That it would be right atrium to this, to right ventricle, and then right ventricle will be sending the blood to lungs. But basically, it is from the body, because this entire circuit, right atrium to right ventricle, they are not stopping the blood. Right? The blood is easily passing. But where the blood is stopping, well, the blood will be stopping into the body, into the periphery, right? When you run, so you find that sometimes hands are swollen, right? There is edema, right? Swelling of the feet. Face becomes bigger, all those things. So that is what pooling of the blood in various areas, various organs, right? If there is hemorrhage, then blood is getting pooled over there. So the point is that blood is getting pooled into various areas of the body. Blood is not getting pooled into this right atrium or right ventricle, left atrium or left ventricle, unless heart fails. Right? We'll talk about it. But right now we are considering that heart is healthy. Heart is healthy. So it is the body where the blood will be pooled. In body where venous return. Right? So if the body is sending good blood via superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, right? If body is sending that, so then right atrium would say, I don't have problem, push the blood to right ventricle, from right ventricle to lungs, and from lungs, that blood comes to left atrium, and then from left atrium to left ventricle, and then our left ventricle is loaded. So that means our preload is high, correct? So can we write it like that? Preload, it depends upon increased venous return. Higher the venous return, higher the preload. Now when there is higher venous return, so that blood will be getting pushed into the ventricle. So there would be higher end diastolic volume. Yeah, that's what we were talking as the preload, right? And if there is end diastolic volume, something amazing happens. This is left atrium, blood pushed, and now this is left ventricle. So now left ventricle would be stretched because more blood is coming from the top. So it is stretched, right? It is stretched. So left ventricle is telling that don't stretch me much, because if you are stretching my sarcomeres, if you are stretching my muscle fibers more, so they are like a rubber band. They will contract with more power. This is what is called as sarcomere lengthening. So it makes total sense that when there is end diastolic volume increased, that means ventricle, right? Ventricle is loaded, right? Ventricle is loaded, stretched, right? It is stretched. When it is stretched, so this is what is called as the sarcomere lengthening. The myofibrils, right? Myofibrils, they are stretched. When they are more stretched, they will be contracting with the more power. And that thing is called as the increased contractility. This is what is needed. When you say that you are running, right? As you run, you will find that yes, there is no problem in the hand. There is no swelling, nothing. This means the entire blood, right? It is not getting accumulated in your feet, in your arms, anywhere. no peripheral accumulation. That means that blood is returning back into the system. When it is returning into the system, left ventricle is happy. Yes, fully loaded, right? It has to just beat once and it pushes the blood. It has to beat once and it pushes the blood because there is increased contractility that is associated with higher stroke volume. Right? Makes total sense because if there is if contractility is and now ES will be that's right. When the contractility, I was just coming to that, but good you say that way, very nice. So when there is increased contractility, so there will be increased stroke volume, right? Because it will be pushing the good blood out with every stroke. And as very rightly what you said is with increased contractility will also lead to decrease in decrease in end systolic volume. Right? So end systolic volume. That means the amount of blood which will be left out into the ventricle, that would be very low because it is pushing and throwing the blood. So this is the thing. So once again, when we take our calculations back, that stroke volume, what was stroke volume? Stroke volume was equal to end diastolic volume minus end systolic volume. And now you have lowered this end systolic volume, right? Because sarcomere lengthening, increased contractility, it is contracting powerfully, throwing the blood. So thus we have got increased stroke volume, right? Because ESV is decreased. Correct? So this is the thing. So that's why what is called as the conditioning. Right? Conditioning. Many times you might get a feel that I'll be explaining these things with reference to marathon. Right? Because marathon, all these parameters they come into consideration. Now those who are non-medical, for them, many times when I explain them, so they say, sir, bata dijiye na kya kar. Right? They find this thing a bit difficult to understand. But you'll appreciate that once you understand it, your entire exercise performance will change. Because when you'll run and you'll find hands are totally fine, there is no swelling, right? So you'll be so happy. Yes, my heart is working better. I've increased my stroke volume. Right? So heart performance is definitely going better. So this was the preload. Now comes afterload. The most and the last topic, the most confusing topic, afterload. Now, afterload is not related to heart, but it affects heart. Afterload is total peripheral resistance. Total peripheral resistance. Right? Think it like you're driving a car. Right? You're driving a car. That's your car. Right? And you are going. If there is any obstruction, right? And obstruction is like, it is not like koi ped gira hua hai, there is rock. No. Right? There is grass, big heaps of grass. You can push it easily. Right? So you are driving and those big grasses, right? Then you are moving. But will it affect your speed? Might not affect. Right? You will say, no, itna to we can easily negotiate. Aram se dhakka maar ke nikal. But your engine, car engine will know. It has to strain because there is an opposing resistance. Got it? Right? It won't stop the car. Same thing happens when we are dealing with the heart. Total peripheral resistance is what? When someone's arteries are clogged, right? This is the artery. If there is atherosclerosis. So if there is atherosclerosis, that means inner lining is now coated, right? So thus there is decrease in the caliber. Decrease in the caliber means जो road बड़ा था, that bigger road, that road has become smaller. If that road has become smaller, so then bichare RBCs, they are tumbling into it, right? They are going with difficulty. So that means there is resistance. So that resistance, that will be backfired, right? So there would be the backward resistance. Collectively, all of them, right? All the tissues of the body, whatever the amount of resistance which they are creating, that is what is called as the TPR, or the total peripheral resistance. And our left ventricle is doing what? Left ventricle is pushing against that only, that resistance only, right? Whether that resistance is into the foot, that resistance is into the hand, that resistance is into the neck, wherever, but resistance is there because blood has to trickle everywhere. So wherever there is resistance, the summation effect comes, and that is what is called as the TPR, and this is called as the afterload. So in other words, graphically, when we say, instead of this our car, if we say this is our heart, right, this is our left ventricle, and this is the exit, what is the load over here? What is the load present which is after the heart, which we have to pass through? So that's why this is called as the afterload. And afterload for heart, it is nothing but it is the TPR, total peripheral resistance. Right? So higher the TPR, higher the afterload. If there is higher the afterload, so bichara lung is, ventricle. Left ventricle is pushing, but फिर भी he'll say कि was sorry, थोड़ा blood रह गया, small amount of blood is left out because I tried my best, but the resistance was more, so I इतनी देर में तो cycle was complete. The next cardiac cycle was starting, so thus there would be increased afterload. That is because of the increased TPR leads to increase end systolic volume, and that will lead to decrease stroke volume. Right? Is this part clear? Whatever you are watching on the screen was this much. Increased TPR leads to increase in end systolic volume, which leads to decrease in stroke volume. Any doubt? Let me know. Right. If all good, let's move further. Just few points clear. Great. So in healthy heart, right, now we have to, because you have to understand it from both the aspects. What happens in healthy heart? What happens when the heart is in having some pathology? That is the point when you will be giving some drug. So you should know that this drug will be doing what? At what point will it be acting? So everything becomes very easy. So here it is. For healthy heart, right? This is the rule of physics, right? So it is applicable to everyone. Total peripheral resistance, so that has led to decrease in the stroke volume. So what would happen? It will, for healthy heart, preload compensates. Preload compensates. How preload compensates? That, say, it is the preload, right? Because in the healthy one, the total peripheral resistance would not be high. So when the heart will say, I need to push more blood, it will say, okay, I'll supply you more blood. So as we saw that when the more blood is getting supplied, that means there will be sarcomere lengthening and heart is pumping powerfully, right? It is the afterload which leads to heart failure. So it is not the preload, but it is the afterload, right? Afterload has more effect for heart failure. So here, those who have joined right from the beginning, they know that during our respiratory system discussion, we talked about law of Laplace, right? Or the Laplace law. We take that law once again over here. So what Laplace law is, that wall stress, the amount of pressure which is getting generated onto the wall, right? If you were to really calculate, then that is pressure, right? How much pressure multiplied by radius. And this we used when we are talking about those alveoli, right? Divided by wall thickness. Wall thickness. Now see how smart. Whenever the heart is enlarged, right? Whenever the heart is enlarged, or whenever there is more pressure, so then this wall thickness, that you'll find that wall thickness increases, because if the wall thickness increases, so this is the bigger number which is into denominator. So thus the stress would be reduced. This is the reason that as you exercise, your left ventricle, that will become more powerful. Its muscles, they will become thick, right? Its wall will become thick, because when that thick, so this is the number which becomes bigger. If this number becomes bigger, so wall stress decreases, right? Because bigger number is dividing this whole number, right? Pressure, radius, right? They are keeping the same. So this means that this pressure into radius, it is
Recording
that is
in
which
progress.
phase? Diastolic phase. And when there is diastolic phase is long, so that means what? What would happen when the diastolic phase is longer? It will be getting more. What would be more when the diastolic phase is longer? Hmm? It would lead to improved left ventricular myocardial perfusion. Got it? Huh. EDV will be, that's right. But the most important is the coronary perfusion, coronary vessels, right? They will be getting time to dilate, and they will be lavishly giving blood to the left ventricle. To boss enjoy, right? And then kha pi ke, left ventricle is now again ready for the next pump, right? So that is more important. That's why last time when I said that you all must exercise in what is called as the zone 2, when you exercise in zone 2, you condition your heart in such a way that you are improving, as per the Laplace law, you are decreasing the wall stress, you are improving the cardiac output. At the same time, you are keeping the heart rate low. You are keeping it to zone 2. And it is this zone 2 which is the fat burning zone. So it is like all the good effects, they come into this zone, right? Okay. The next one, the final one, this is what is called as the contractility. After that, we'll just watch one graph, right? That is the graph, which is like summation of all these things whatsoever we have learned. And it is this graph where they ask you the question in USMLE. But if you have understood till this point, everything fine. Next point is so very simple. You'll find that this graph is nothing, it is peanut. Right? Everything will be, it will appear in front of you. So here it is. The next point is, we have already talked about it, contractility. So contractility, heart has to pump fast, right? Heart has to beat fast whenever there is increased sympathetic activity, right? When there is increased sympathetic nervous system stimulation, right? So there is increased contractility because neurotransmitter based. Right? So nothing new. Simply, whenever there is emergency, the heart has to beat fast, lung has to breathe fast, everything, right? Digestive system shuts down. So that is the sympathetic system. And during this, there is decrease. And what would happen? When there is increased contractility, so there is decreased and systolic volume. Right? So this is how it will keep on working. This is for sympathetic nervous system. Now we'll talk about one of the very important graph or the very important mechanism, and that is what is called as the Frank-Starling mechanism. Right? This is Frank-Starling mechanism. This Frank-Starling mechanism is combination of everything. So its basic principle is that is when you increase preload, what happens? When you increase preload, so that means there would be increased contractility, right? Increased contractility. Why? Simply one word, because sarcomere lengthening. Correct? Sarcomere lengthening. And that thing will lead to increase in the stroke volume. So far, so good. So when we say there is increased venous return, right? Increased preload means increased venous return. Increased venous return, that means there is increased end diastolic volume. Increased end diastolic volume, so basically it is increased preload, just the other way around, but otherwise it is same thing. So that it will lead to what? It will lead to increase sarcomere lengthening. Correct? Sarcomere lengthening. Because myocytes, they stretch. Correct? Myocytes stretch. All these are keywords. Myocyte stretch. Because that's how it will be. So there is increased active tension. So when this happens, this is the final outcome, right? Word by word. There is increase in, this is the keyword, active tension. Because when it is dilated, right, so there is tension, there is active tension and increased velocity of contraction. Correct? Take a rubber band, right? When we stretch it, जब छोड़ा तो साट, मतलब हाथ पे लगता है, right? It will fast. And if you just stretch it this much, then nothing would happen. The more you stretch, the more it will backfire, no doubt, up to a limit, right? If you keep on stretching the rubber band to a limit, right, beyond limit, it would break. Same thing happens over here, right? So till a level, so then it is giving best of the efficiency. But when there is so much of pressure to heart, it keeps on enlarging. So at one point of time, its efficiency is gone. Now it is just like a fluffy bag, right, which is filled with blood, but it is unable to contract. So that is when you'll find massive cardiomegaly. But such big cardiomegaly doesn't mean that heart is very efficient. No, it has gone beyond that level. Literally like those rubber bands. Usko aapne itna खींचा कि now that rubber band is broken. So it has lost its contractility. So that's the difference. Right? There is increase in active tension and increased velocity of contraction up to physiological limit. Physiological limit. Sometimes they say that then never take a drug. Never take a drug and then do the exercise. Well, jokes apart, but yes, it is like I say in New York Marathon. And one of my cousin was running. He said that wahan pe they give tequila also. Now that is bad. That is bad. Well, for fun, it's okay, but no. Right? All those things they can discuss later. That how can it really affect your even Red Bull, right? Many people they say, "Chalo Red Bull." Red Bull is what? It is loaded with caffeine and sugar. Now sugar part is okay. They say caffeine it gives the kick, but then it is only for a short duration. After that, the insulin spikes. When the insulin spikes, blood sugar drops like anything. So that means if someone has taken the Red Bull on the 40th kilometer, chances are high that by the time when he finishes the race, right, he is just finished, right? He won't be able to even stand on his feet. So anyway, coming back to this Frank Sterling wave, right, or the graph or the curve. This is the curve. This is what is asked in exam. On one side, there is, just a minute, I'll just see what question you have to say. This is the stroke volume, and so this is on y-axis, and on the x-axis we have got left ventricular end diastolic pressure, or you can write left ventricular end diastolic volume, one and the same thing, or you can write preload, am I right? Or you can write fiber length. All these are interconnected. So is Red Bull okay to drink normally or just avoid it? Normally, one Red Bull is equal to seven spoons of sugar. 7 spoons of sugar. The thing what is called as the SOS diet. If you want to improve your body, avoid sugar, avoid oil. Oil konsa, right? Which is that saturated oil. The samosas and everything, they are tale hue 2 baar, 3 baar, so that is the worst thing. Also carcinogenic. Yeah, palm oil, bad. And the salt. And the salt. Which salt? Apna sodium chloride. Right? Sodium chloride is bad. Right? The potassium chloride, that is very good. And about sting, it also energy. Sting, those mujhe nahi pata. I don't know about sting. I mean, I've heard of that, but I don't know what are the contents of it. So, samosa and gulab jamun. हाँ, मतलब खाना हो तो खा सकते हैं. There's no harm. Means in post refreshment, they give samosa and gulab jamun, but after 42 kilometers, right? Tab theek hai, 80 calories of samosa and 100 calories of gulab jamun, that is permeable. Right? That is allowed. 13% caffeine. क्यों इतना लेना है? Achha, let's finish the topic first, right? Otherwise, this is such a thing. Coffee means I do drink coffee, but it has to be, because the half-life of the coffee is 6 to 8 hours. And there are two types of people. One, those who are having high caffeine metabolism. Now, this is like genetic. And those who are on slow. Now, it is said that 55% are slow caffeine metabolizer and 45% of the population is fast caffeine metabolizer. If you are falling under this, so then for you, the half-life of the caffeine is less. So even if you drink coffee in the evening hours, still you will be able to sleep comfortably. बहुत फर्क नहीं पड़ता. But why to take chance, right? Because it is like half-life. Half-life का मतलब क्या? In 6 hours, its effect would be half. In other 6 hours, so this is 50%. In other 6 hours, it will be 25%. In other 6 hours, it will be 12.5%. Now, the amount of coffee which you have consumed at this point, right? So that's what it keeps on getting affected. So black coffee tastes bitter. So how do you drink it? Black coffee, say I have found a solution of it. What I do is I take decaf. Right? I take decaf. Previously, I used to have coffee, but then I found, it is not giving me that quality sleep. Right? My RAM phase, that was not that effective. So the ring which you are watching, right? This is the ring which measures more than 14 parameters of the body, right? It keeps on checking pulse and blood pressure and this, that, and then so many things, right? And you get it in the form of app. So it also calculates the quality of sleep. So decaf is what? Decaffeinated, right? In Nescafe also it comes. So in the morning, I make 3 cups of coffee. Right? I make 3 cups of coffee. So previously it was like, say, 3 spoons. Now it is 1 spoon of coffee, right? Apni normal Nescafe badhiya, and plus 2 spoons of decaf. So practically you have cut down, right? And then you just make these things in the morning and then micro करके पी लिया, or you put it into that tumbler जिसमें आराम से गर्म रहे, but finish everything by 2 p.m. bus. After 2 p.m. So one is in the morning after I come back, so that is at say 8 a.m. Second one, when this share market is going on, so at that point you feel like chalo, let's have so 12 baje ek aad, and at 2 o'clock just relax, and if not needed you can even avoid it. But then after that, no coffee, so that by the time when you reach to 10 o'clock, right, you get finest of the sleep, and from 10 to 4, right, these 6 hours you get such a good sleep so that you are ready for the next day. And once you will follow this, you will find one of the biggest thing, that even at any stage of the day you'll never feel कि यार थक गए हैं और नींद आ रही है, unable to focus, कभी नहीं होगा. हाँ, 2 decaf and 1 caf, that's right, 2 decaf, 1 caf. So coming back to this is left ventricular end diastolic pressure, or left ventricular end diastolic volume, or preload, or fiber length, all are same, right? And now as the left ventricular, now I'm about to draw the graph, as the left ventricular end diastolic pressure or the volume increases, right, at the end of the diastole there is more blood, so the stroke volume would be higher. So we can draw a graph like this, right, but up to a certain point. After that, it would be like a plateau, right? So this slope, if I draw one graph, and in exam you'll be given one graph like this, and you'll be asked that in which of it there is increase in the contractility. This would be named as, this is the slope A, and this one is the slope B. Out of slope A and slope B, in which one there is decreased contractility, right? Now, if you have understood everything till this point, right, you will find that I'll be asking you 3 or 4 questions. You should be able to answer all of them. If yes, sab aa gaya, right? This is like you are cracking the US. Chalo, do participate, because only गिने चुने लोग ही आंसर कर रहे हैं. Just 4, 5, 6. Question. I repeat the question. I'm repeating it. From slope A and slope B, or the line A, line B, two are there, out of in which there would be decreased or the less contractility. Now, think it like this. Stroke volume, I'm answering. Okay, who answered? Right. Okay, Nilaja, very good. Khushi, Shabash, Swastika, Sharon, Ruchita. Awesome. Ved, very good. I'm not speaking the answers, right? So that I want that more of you should attempt. In case if it is wrong, I won't take your name. Don't worry, but do take part. अरे गलती हो तो भी क्या? Make some mistake. Yes, Deepika, good one. You are right. Yes, Atharu, perfect. Iman, good. You have, think again. I won't take your name. Right? Durgesh, you are good. So you have written A with question mark, right? I'm not taking your name. Don't worry. Now I'll ask you questions. Try to answer. Right? Okay. So out of A and B, if we see in which case the stroke volume is more, right? If I draw a line over here, let's draw a line, right? So if we draw let's draw at a one level, say a line over here, right? That is at a fixed left ventricular end diastolic pressure, that where is the stroke volume higher? Right, all of you. So here it is, right? Stroke volume is higher on A, right? Because with the same amount of diastolic, right, the stroke volume is higher in A. So when the higher the stroke volume, and we saw that higher the stroke volume, that is higher the contractility, you know, because that blood has stressed and then it has contracted. So higher the stroke volume, higher the contractility. So this means this is with increased contractility, correct? Because increased contractility will, because this is the, it will fatafat, right? It will go. And this one would be the decreased contractility. Okay. Next question. Stroke volume is higher in case of A. You are right. Yes. Next one. In both of these cases, right, venous return would be better in what? A or B? Venous return. Better venous return. It would be better in A or B. That's right, Sharan. Nishad, Chitra, Vaishnavi, yes, Riya, all good. Swastika, Kushi, Durgesh, all of you. Yes, all good. Yes, the venous return would be better. So venous return, can I say that venous return was what? Venous return was afterload. So can I say that in case of A, there is decreased afterload? There is decreased afterload. Because venous return can be better only when there is less of the resistance. Right? So there is no pooling. Pura blood, that entire blood is going back and that is getting circulated. Correct? So the point is increased contractility, decreased afterload, and accordingly it goes. Right? Perfect. We now talk about just one last point, and that point is which you know it very well. In fact, right? I think what is called as the mean arterial pressure. Mean arterial pressure. Mean arterial pressure, that is dependent on TPR. It is determined by, it is proportional to TPR, total peripheral resistance. So what it is? This TPR is nothing, or sorry, this mean arterial pressure, that is nothing but, simply speaking, it is cardiac output into total peripheral resistance. Right? This mean arterial pressure. So mean arterial pressure, we calculated also, right? In last time's exam, we asked 1/3 of the systolic pressure, 1/3 of the systolic pressure plus 2/3, right? 2/3 of the diastolic pressure. And why are we really taking this? Because it is depending upon the time, right? Because of time of phase. So when we said that if someone's blood pressure is 120/80, so then what is the mean arterial pressure? The mean arterial pressure would be 120/3 plus, right, 2/3 into 80. Right? So when you calculate, so this will be, this goes, right? So this would be like 40, and this is 160/3, so roughly 50, 51 to 53.3, right? This would be like, its value would be 53.3. So your mean arterial pressure, that would be 93, roughly 93.3, right? So this would be the mean arterial pressure. And it is because the systolic phase, right? Systolic phase and then the diastolic phase. So systolic phase, it lasts for 1 unit of time, diastolic phase lasts for 2 units of time. So that's how it really goes. And the pulse pressure. Pulse pressure. Pulse pressure, very easy. Systolic blood pressure minus diastolic blood pressure. Diastolic blood pressure. So that is what is called as the pulse pressure. Now, this is important for two conditions. One, decrease pulse pressure. So in this case, how the blood pressure will look like? 120 over 100. See, the diastolic is more. So the pulse pressure is just 20. You will find this thing in case of cardiac tamponade. Right? Cardiac tamponade. Cardiac tamponade, this is like the pericardial effusion, right? Pericardial effusion. So that when there is restrictive pericardial effusion, when there is restrictive enlargement of the heart, right? So pericardial effusion. When there would be increased pulse pressure, right? Increased pulse pressure. So when it is like increased pulse pressure, so when the systole, right, that becomes bigger and the diastole falls. So either way, right? So even if it is like say 120 upon, let's say this goes to 60. So this is increased pulse pressure, right? Classical condition, aortic regurgitation. When we'll be discussing all these conditions separately. But when it will be discussed, so at that point, these things will come into the diagnosis. Right? That how can you really diagnose? So coronary perfusion or the coronary blood flow. Right? This is coronary blood flow autoregulation. In this, you have to remember just one point, and that is adenosine. Right? Just the adenosine. So when we say the left ventricular coronary blood flow, right? So you get this thing in diastole, right? Ventricular diastole. Right? So whenever there is oxygen demand, whenever because that oxygen deficit will come, right? Because muscles are asking for the oxygen. So whenever there is increase in the oxygen demand, will require ATP, right? Whenever the oxygen is needed, so then ATP is needed. ATPs are needed because then and then ATP will be used for the heartbeat. So over here, first thing occurs, there is increased oxygen demand, say for example during exercise, right? So there has to be coronary dilation, coronary vasodilation. This is one of the very, very interesting questions they do come from it. Increased oxygen demand, there has to be coronary vasodilation. Right? Say for example exercise. So increase O2, that means at this point of time we have got less ATP. So we need more ATP. We need more ATP. So that means there has to be something which will give. So two things. One is adenosine, because adenosine ATP is needed. So adenosine triphosphate, that is needed. So this is the adenosine which is needed. And second is the nitric oxide. Those who are going to gym, they must have noticed that many times they say to take nitric oxide. Right? It is available in powder form. So they are vasodilators. But these are local vasodilators. So this means when this is released, right, they are the coronary vasodilator, but its effect will be restricted to that part. Similarly, this nitric oxide, it is taken for some other purposes. But the point is that they are coronary vasodilator. Right? And it is this coronary vasodilator when it is mixed with the oxygen, because only alone adenosine cannot do anything. So why you have to do the breathing exercise? Because increased O2, right? In presence of O2 with adenosine, it leads to formation of ATP, and it is this ATP which is utilized for all the functions. Why people get attack? Adenosine is present, right? Adenosine is present, but because they try to do the coronary vasodilation, but even after vasodilation, say the internal caliber is obstructed, so the amount of blood which should really rush, the amount of oxygen which should have been carried for the destination, because this is demanding oxygen, in presence of adenosine, it will make ATPs and it will use it. That much oxygen is not reaching. So that's why it is, practically speaking, this area of the heart is devoid of nutrition, and that is what is called as the infarction, right? So actually, myocardial infarction, heart attack, when we say that area is devoid of blood, but this is the mechanism what really happens. It is like that poor fellow is dying, lack of food, lack of oxygen, right? So that is what leads to infarction. So that's it for our today's topic. Just I'll put this file into our shared folder. Thank you so much. And study well, do take good care of yourself. Bye. Thank you and take care.
Record.